Welcome back to the second video in Maximizing Equity and Engagement with NGSS Resources. We started this session by mentioning that Appendix D was part of the K-12 framework for science education. All Standards, All Students calls educators to bridge achievement gaps and to reduce the gatekeeping that has taken place in science education. The types of inequities become clear when we look at the layout of society and we look at who is in the science and engineering workforce. Take a moment to observe the differences in 2010 between who was making up the resident population of the United States and who was in the workforce. Do you see overrepresentation, underrepresentation, or any other trends? A question for educators and scientists is, why might our civilian population include 10% of people with a disability, but science and engineering occupations only have 6% of people with that identity marker? And why does gender in the workforce look so different than our day-to-day lives? Why does it vary by region? As you look at those data sets, you can think about them through the concept of cause and effect. If those data sets are the effect, representing who ends up in the workforce as scientists and engineers, what is the cause that creates that? Why do doors open to some people and others not? Why does the workforce look so different than the population of our classrooms or our society in general? Looking at some of the research around the STEM fields and what the causes might be, we notice that there are some things that we can pinpoint. Socioeconomic status is considered the biggest barrier to STEM participation. Conferences conducted in South America, we also noted that the makeup of our classrooms in high math and sciences by 11th and 12th grade started to look more like the research workforce that we see in the field. Specifically in regards to gender, we see an interesting and unfortunate phenomena that changes with age. Take a moment to look at how children draw a scientist as their age increases. For all of these reasons, we consider it important and necessary for us to carry out the work from Appendix D. This begins with disrupting inequity through our practices in the classroom and in our schools and our belief systems. In systems thinking, we understand that an event that we may see on a given day is likely related to a larger pattern, such as those that we just looked at in the data sets. Those are just the tip of the iceberg, and really what governs them are the systems and structures below it and the mental models and beliefs that push those systems and structures into existence. If we want to disrupt what we see at the tip of the iceberg, we need to change our systems, and most importantly, we need to change our mental models and beliefs about who deserves to be in the science workforce and what we can do as educators to support them in seeing themselves as scientists and engineers. Like Martin Chalfie, it's possible that you and your students have been conditioned to believe that scientists are lone geniuses or madmen working alone in a lab. Let's work to replace those false images and that lack of representation by understanding that scientists work in teams and promoting the idea that science has always been a collaborative effort. Martin Chalfie's team of award-winning scientists also exposes another truth. Scientific teams are not just made up of white men and women, but with them and behind them are diverse groups of people, and their perspectives help scientific problem solving happen. What happens as scientists and engineers work to create innovations and solve problems in society when diverse perspectives are not considered? We can also change beliefs and break down barriers by ensuring that students understand there's not just one type of person that gets to be good at science. Being good at science is not just about coming in with high math skills or being a good test taker or even liking science in the beginning. We can use strategies like universal design for learning to ensure that every learner gets to engage in science and grow their scientific practice and literacy. Some of the ways that we can do that are through engagement, representation, and action and expression. For best results, as you grow your practice with Universal Design for Learning in the context of your NGSS resources, a layering approach will surely engage the greatest amount of learners. At NGSS Partnership, we are big fans of the work of STEM Teaching Tools, the team that works with Philip Bell to develop many resources helping us deepen our implementation. When we look at that compendium of tools, it's clear that every class, lesson, unit, discussion, phenomena, they're all opportunities for equity and engagement. We have many entry points and many levers. Every day is an opportunity. Appendix D asks us to consider how all students can be successful at all standards, regardless of their background, and in partnership with many of the assets and resources that exist within their communities. Fortunately, the NGSS standards were built with a lot of guidance and intentionality in order to disrupt inequities. One thing that was built into them, in comparison to older science standards, are the cross-cutting concepts. These 7 concepts allow scientific sense-making to happen frequently and across disciplines in a way that takes the isolation out of certain scientific disciplines. We also know that contact time for science can be challenging, especially for elementary and early childhood educators. Crosswalking the Common Core ELA and math supports literacy and numeracy during science time and makes it easier to do transdisciplinary work. The NGSS standards also include standards with an asterisk, which show a place that engineering is integrated within the standards. The idea here is that engineering or STEM should not have to be a separate class or an after-school club. These standards are meant to understand the context in which they are situated and rely upon cultural assets. In order to create the most equitable learning opportunities, we should value and respect the experiences that all students bring from their backgrounds, homes, and communities. We should allow students to articulate their background knowledge using cultural and linguistic knowledge that is unique to them, in conjunction with disciplinary knowledge. As teachers, we can capitalize on these funds of knowledge in several ways. We can do this by ensuring that our classrooms are spaces for sense-making conversations, where we get to hear student voice and experience and bring those pieces of knowledge in. We also have to look outside the classroom, into the parent community, looking at local museums and universities. What is there in the community that can enhance science, making it more relevant and more culturally appropriate? And point number 3 is specifically important for administrators and budget managers. It's important to offer sufficient school resources to support student learning. This includes personnel, time, curricular resource programs, and more. To finish this module, you'll be naming a practice or belief that you'd like to shift or disrupt in order to create more equitable and engaging science in your classroom and your school. There are so many ways that we can do this, so let's take a moment to consider some of the things that we can influence the most. You're a teacher, you have so many possibilities for how you can positively influence science. The first one is with phenomena. When you get NGSS resources, they often come with phenomena selected for you. Looking at your local community, it's important to consider what phenomena will be the most culturally relevant and the most interesting and engaging. A lot of those programs don't know who's in your classroom or where you are, so taking a moment to substitute out those phenomena for better ones can keep engagement high. You can choose high-quality videos, books, and articles that don't kill the wonder, as Paul Anderson would say. We want to make sure that our videos don't tell students what they're supposed to be figuring out. You can also make sure that they are local and culturally relevant as much as possible, and that the depictions of scientists and those engaging in science in all of those resources is diverse and shows collaboration. We can extend learning and showcase community assets by going on trips or by inviting in guest speakers. Sometimes those can also be done virtually. We can ensure that as we plan our learning, we use universal design for learning to reduce barriers, and we respond to learner needs through differentiation. We can also make sure that we use equitable and inclusive instruction and assessment practices. Sometimes that means modifying instruction and assessment in order to fit the learner's needs in our classrooms and in our context, especially with multilingual learners. We can ensure that we are building a sense-making environment where everybody has a voice and everyone gets to contribute. A great teacher that I work with described this as running a science talk show in your classroom, where you pose that phenomena and you get all of the students talking about it and you pass that mic around, even if you don't have a real microphone. Hopefully you get the idea. We have many opportunities to allow student voice to come through and to provide them with choices within structures that also don't make our jobs too difficult. And we save the best for last, or the most important. Just like the bottom of the iceberg, we can constantly reflect and check our own beliefs and values. We need to make sure that what we believe about ourselves, science, and our students promote a collaborative version of science where everybody gets to move forward and all students are able to be successful in all standards, so that every one of them could potentially enter the science workforce if they wanted to, positively impacting their world and society. The next set are institutional influence. This is something that many teachers can do, but if you are a coach, a middle leader, a senior leader, a point person, these are things that you may want to keep in mind. We can look at how equity and engagement are embedded into policies. Those policies might be language policies, assessment policies, homework policies, or one of the many other policies that we have in schools. We can also look at system structures that show representation of science within our schools. That includes who we hire and how we retain teaching staff or science department staff, who we admit into the school through admissions, who enrolls in courses, especially high math and high science courses, how our schedules in schools may contribute to tracking or only allowing certain students that have certain math levels or other prerequisites to continue in high math and sciences. We can ensure that we have a curricular review process so that the quality of science is being checked on a regular basis through a variety of data and resources. And we can make sure that there is budget to purchase resources in order to fund what's in our science classrooms and perhaps where we can go and what we can connect to outside of our classrooms and schools. It could be overwhelming to consider all the ways that you can have an impact on equity and engagement, but as mentioned, every day is an opportunity and you could just start with one standard. To get this idea across, I just want to share a shout out for a special educator that I met at the IRCOS conference, Lisa from Shanghai. She works on a grade 1 team. She already did some work to increase engagement with one of her LS standards by bringing students to a field trip at an aquarium. But we did some brainstorming and we used generative AI to help us look at the performance expectations in her bundle for grade 1 and connect us to things that are local, culturally significant, and also have sustainability and human impact foci. What we discovered through our conversation with ChatGPT is that the famous Chinese dragon that you see in many festivals and depictions of China is inspired by the Chinese alligator, and that the Chinese alligator has had some troubles in China and is now endangered because of some of the human impact in the area. So as we left the conference, Lisa was reworking these ideas of local and culturally relevant phenomena into her unit and enhancing it one standard at a time. Imagine how through that small adjustment, more students can get excited because it's something they recognize. More students may have observations and questions and stories to connect to this in the sense-making process. Making this small adjustment allows more students to make contributions and connections to the topic in the sense-making process. It also gives the possibility to create a sustainability or human impact project related to the Chinese alligator. which keeps relevance and authenticity high while also meeting standards. Hopefully, this session has showed you how many opportunities exist to use your influence to increase equity and engagement with your NGSS resources. How will you use your influence to open doors?